Thank you, Geshi.
The foundation of our house was built on an anthem. The anthem was a prayer our hearts rendered in the language of silence. The rooms reflect our hearts, with no light, no warmth. The floors balance the stones our souls carry. Flowers withered by bitter breath. Cold crawls over us and nibbles at our seams. We never knew lack until poverty found residency in our mouths. Despondency has been rattling the door's hinges. Notwithstanding that, tonight we're hosting a dinner to find out how we got here, how we have come to this house, come I see you, to further life or to end it. Who bribed us into deserting our lifeline? We asked all and sundry to come dine with us, a night that stretched for 26 years. We served organic suggestions that night, topped with rhetorical questions. These guests are not here to eat the plight of our life's stories, to hear how we are not living to go to heaven, but to not look at every meal as though it's the Last Supper. We all keep glancing at equality with faint smiles, trying to ignore how we became victimized by the spoils of a struggle. No one often reminds the once oppressed how tyrannical giants fall. So when fortune favors them, greed has them inflating, bursting beyond their bellies. Illusions of democracy attempt to open my mouth, but reality has this tongue feeling like a severed limb. There are gaps in this conversation of intellectual liberation that have our voices shifting as tectonic plates. Until Father Time uttered his only words that evening, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." Abruptly, labor shouted to capitalism. This forged, long-run romance between us and progress is no longer glue that keeps this house together. You have redefined moral hazards, dealt a hand to hedge everything but the people. With a smug, capitalism retorted, "Don't feed on what you can't fund." The futurist put on his contact lens to comment. This house is on fire. All present are flooding it with emptiness, drenching every space with blood clots to save its foundation. Tip the scales. Sorrow has assaulted your lungs for far too long. Deflate into a readiness to flow. Teach the mind so the heart may preserve its lessons. Our minds are gifts. Earth acknowledges our presence. And so the next day, we spring cleaned, dusted off distrust, washed the years of betrayal off the walls, washed inequality off our skin, watched injustice flow out the baths, and see it drain stagnation's throat. To hear our own esophagus emphasize the echo of victories our stomachs are yet to clasp. Soak ourselves in knowledge from Urban Festival 2020, embracing our best ideals which await in plenty. We will refurnish every room with a lived experience, embedded in the sight of memory, not yet sung of us.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Seeding Civic Action exhibition and Q&A session. Welcome and thank you for joining us. I know we have quite a small room and it's definitely going to be a very intimate and conversational session. So just to get started, today we will be showcasing 8 projects, which just to give a little background came from a seeding a seed funding for urban projects fund, which was sent out by the SACN in August, and essentially this was a call for urban actors to send in their proposals for projects that had to do with the urban and projects that uplifted their communities. So today we have with us 7 out of the 8 projects that were chosen to be funded, and I will introduce each of them shortly. But I would just like to say thank you again for joining us. Please be encouraged to leave any questions or comments that do come through in the chat section. And without further ado, I will introduce our urban change makers. So first of all, we have Malebone Dodetsi. I hope I said your name correctly. She is currently an unemployed urban planning graduate from Standerton, which is a town in Mpumalanga. And her project is on bucket farming, which we'll get to hear a little more about shortly. We also have with us Vukani Tusi, who has been supporting the elderly in his community, and what his project is called Two Greenish. It's an initiative that he started, and hopefully he'll tell us a little more about that. We also have with us Nomngebo, who works for the Institute of Natural Resources, and she's currently working on a project called Sand Mining Awareness, and it's very interesting to me, so I hope you guys will also be inspired in terms of her project and how you can find different ways to be supported within your communities. And then we have Nkululeko, who is representing Pista Ventures, and they own a project called Open Oceans, and their organization is very much about awareness and with this specific project, it relates to clean oceans, and a lot of their work does also include work around circularity. We have with us Lee, who is representing the Jewish community, and her project, which is called Distance, quite a very interesting project, which I'm very excited to see what the final output of that will be. Please let me know if I haven't introduced someone. I'm not sure if Sanele has been able to join us as yet, but I will introduce anyone who I've left out as we do go along. So before we get into a discussion about the projects and what took place with each of them over the past month, which our urban change makers have been working tirelessly on, we have prepared a short 12-minute video that basically pulls together all the different projects and just gives you an overview of what each of those are. So if Sean is ready, I would like to ask him to play us the video.
My name is Malibone Tebiso Todetsi, currently an unemployed graduate town planner from Standerton. I would describe Standerton as a typical small town where we all know each other. I think what stands out the most is a strong sense of community, which I can attribute to the fact that we all know each other. This sense of community created an environment where we could share our struggles openly and seek or give help, whether it be from neighbors, friends, family, you name it. My initiative is called Bucket Farming, which is basically farming or growing food using buckets instead of land. I identified 15 families and provided each family with buckets, seeds, potting soil, and training related to farming. I chose buckets because it is just easier to maintain and easier to replicate whether one has access to land or not. The greatest obstacle was having to convince people that growing food in buckets would actually work. I got to learn that introducing a new concept requires patience, clear communication of the bigger picture, and just also putting yourself in the shoes of those you are trying to help. Thank you.
My project initiative is Little Farmers. We are trying to teach all grade 4 in primary schools as Iksasa NPO how to do poultry farming and how to have a small scale egg production. So not just any chickens, it's egg producing chickens for 2 reasons. The first one is that it's important to ingane zikwazi ukuthi interact nezilwane. Number 2, ukuthi we have seen in South Africa, we've got a huge problem where when you look at people who enter the system in grade 1 and people who complete in matric, about 30% of them complete, which means that 70% gets lost in the system. So what we want to do is to help that 70% to have something to do should they get lost on their way. You see a lot of poverty in Mosakula. You go around abantu who are struggling and it becomes your norm. But I was lucky enough, as much as there were a lot of leaders who shaped us and grew us to say, there is more than just what you see here. And so I became Namusanel, who said, I need to get out of here and do more, but not get out of here and do more and then never come back, but then come back and then change Lendawole Marion. With the funding that we got, we've been able to get chickens, we've been able to get cages, we've even been able to provide children with notes on how to go about poultry farming. Our greatest obstacle, as we all know, COVID-19. Of course, schools aren't working as they usually do, which means we've had to do these classes during the weekends, which has been quite an adjustment to get around. Our communities are used to getting food or stationery, but not something that's more long-term. So to get people to understand that has been a difficulty, but we've finally come to a sweet spot where we're all working together and all the stakeholders are happy, and finally the children are learning. So thank you.
Igama le project yethu i2 Greenish Movement. Our initiative is to help abantu abadala abasebenza lapha engadini ngama resources abawadingayo, siphinde sibancede nalapho labadinga khona. So far it has been amazing and umsebenzi yabonakala. We've done sort of like umsebenzi omkhulu kakhulu and bakujabulele lokho. Bese ngithi i-obstacle okanye ama-challenges esihlangabezana nawo njengamanje ukuthi izinto eziningi obukade uyibhale phansi sekufuze bazishintshe manje njengoba iproject isiyenzeka. Bekuyizinto besikade siyibhalile siyenvisionile ukuthi yini edingakalayo, kodwa mase sihlala nomphakathi sibatshela ukuthi okay, now sesitholile ifunding, sesiyaqhubeka ke manje siqhubeka kanjani ke sesibahlanganisa kuma workshops izinto ziya ngokushintsha, azisabi lento wena uyibhale phansi, seziya ngokushintsha, sekumele utackle amanye ama-challenges obukade ungekho aware of wona, and now aware of wona because sekuhlale phansi na umphakathi okutshela kahle ukuthi yini into engakalayo. So izinto ezikanjalo, nanoku-involve abantu, ubanikeza ama-stipends lapho nalapho uma ngabe besebenza, izinto ey'fana nalezo. Yes, so that has been challenging, but I'm glad it's happening because njengamanje I'm learning as I am working. So ngiyasebenza ngapha, at the same time futhi I'm open to learning.
The project title is a Sand Mining Awareness Campaign in the Umgeni catchment. And basically with this awareness campaign, we're wanting to raise awareness in communities around the impacts of illegal sand mining, the laws regulating sand mining, and how to actually apply for a sand mining permit. So you find that because of the mining in the river, it creates these big pits, and children and livestock often drown. The main challenges I've had would be dealing with government departments. Last year, we've done a situational analysis and a legal framework regulating sand mining, because it's shown that like over the last, say, 10 years, sand mining has increased drastically. And before I actually worked on the project, I didn't know about this thing called sand mining. For me, success would mean people knowing which departments to contact to report illegal sand mining, because you find that people throw their hands up and say, who are we going to go to? So for me, I want them to have a reference point that they can contact DMR, they can contact DWS, they can contact DEF if they are having all these problems.
Is a research and design practice that sits at the intersection of design, cultural intelligence, and technology. We're working very closely with SACN on a project called Open Oceans, which is an exploration of our ocean and its waterways. It is a digital platform curated by a community and ecosystem of adventurers, technologists, scientists, creatives, and writers, and is dedicated to the dialogue on sustainability. The culmination of this will involve aspects of citizen science using some drone photography and image processing to really sort of cast people to a broader height in terms of viewing the conversation on circularity. And we're looking forward to really showcasing our project later on this year, and yeah, thoroughly excited.
Ninth Street is a community of Jewish artists based in Johannesburg, and our project, funded by the SA Cities Network, is called Distance. Distance brought together 12 artists of all different backgrounds to work together for one day in a public park. We wanted to see if even during COVID-19 we could find ways of bridging the distances between people of difference. The differences included religion, gender, age, race, place of origin, and sexuality. The project came out of our own struggles as Jewish artists, who are all Jewish and white, and feel our identity is fraught in a post-apartheid South Africa. We also acknowledge that we and our Jewish community in general struggle to branch out of a Jewish white silo and connect with broader South African society. The biggest success has been creating a company of artists who now want to work together again on something longer and bigger. That's how close everyone got over the course of just one day. The other success, and what makes this project important for Johannesburg, is that we discovered a blueprint for what inclusivity and true equality looks like.
Our project is called the Tafelsig Placemaking Initiative. And for this project, we identified a park in Tafelsig in Mitchell's Plain that we wanted to upgrade. We've been working on this for about 2 years with community members, an architect, and then our future cities. To us, we think vibrant public space is quite important in a community because it almost creates a sense of identity within the community, a space of gathering for residents. And if residents take part in the creation of these public spaces, there's also a sense of ownership that comes along with it. our greatest success in this project, I think, was on the day of implementation, when so many community members came out of the blue and helped us paint walls and build benches and really came together. And we really do hope that this continues as they use the park and use this as a space for gathering, interacting and communicating. And yeah, it's by the community, it's for the community, and that's always been our main goal with this project. As we built this park, members from other sections of Mitchell's Plain came to us and asked how do they get this park in their area as well, which is indicative of how lacking of public space, of valuable, meaningful public space this area really is, and how much people value it. It's not necessarily based on the design or based on the project itself, it's the provision of space to use and space in which to gather.
So I hope you enjoyed watching this video and essentially getting a sense of what each of the projects are and what our project holders have been up to over the past month. So just a reminder that if you have any questions or comments while we're discussing, to please put them in the chat section, or you can use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screens to send in any questions you may have. Just a little bit of background before we get into the Q&A is just to bring up the fact that the project is definitely very much IUDF related, as was shown in the initial part of the video, and these projects all align with the vision of the IUDF, which is about creating spaces in which community members are proud and engaged in and very much active citizens. And that's what you see coming through with all these projects in all their differences. So to go into just a quick Q&A session, I would like to just call on Malebone, and I see Sanele has just joined us. So welcome, Sanele. I hope this does not throw you off, but essentially what we're doing now is going into a Q&A. I wanted to ask the two of you, because your projects are very much related in terms of how they respond to community needs, just for you to give us some context on your communities and why you chose your specific projects, and maybe going into what the value is that they have for the community members and how they've responded to you initiating your project.
Hi, Sanele here. Thank you. I'm sorry for joining a little bit late. My link was just giving me a little bit of trouble. So with my project, it's mainly based on trying to create a sustainable system for schools to sort of survive, and also teaching children how to farm. I don't know if you've had a conversation about that, but we're teaching primary school learners how to have a small scale egg production. So it's farming chickens and having the eggs and selling the eggs, because we realized that in our community, in the communities I've been working with, XSNPO always has to come back and either buy shoes or help schools fix windows and all of that, but the school doesn't have an income of their own. So we were trying to figure out a way to be more sustainable. How the community has received it is really, really well. Most parents actually want to join now, and they want to be part of this initiative, and they're asking if they can come with their kids, because the kids are so excited when they get home and they talk about the chickens and whatnot. But there has been some challenges, as with everything, and I think it's something that we've seen even in the past years with other projects we've done, is that the biggest challenge is usually with the school governing body when it comes to working in schools in townships. So school governing bodies usually have the sense that they need to benefit something personally from whatever project that comes into the school. So that was quite a challenge to try and have to explain to them that there's literally no money, no one's getting paid to do this. This is literally a project to help the kids. That became quite a challenge, and so we had a bit of a disturbance the first lesson that we did, but eventually we were able to get them on board. I mean, I did a meeting with them and the principal and the parents, another meeting, because there was already a meeting before I started, to just really clarify why we're there and why we're doing what we're doing. And to also make them realize, I mean, eventually I had to say to them, listen, we'll go to another school if this is too much for you guys and you guys don't want this for your kids. And that's the only time where they were like, okay, don't leave. Let's carry on with the project. That was our biggest challenge. But yeah, the community has received it really well. And I'm quite excited with the direction it's taking, especially since a lot of conversation, even in the country, is around land and sustainability. And it's what we're doing right now. I feel like it's so aligned with that. And it's sort of back to basics, but back to the future in a sense. So yeah, that's what's been going on. It's been really exciting. I hope I answered all the questions.
Yes, you did. And maybe before I respond, if we could have Malibone speak about her project.
Okay, so my project is actually twofold in a sense. Twofold because one, I'm trying to introduce a concept that you can actually grow your own food without using traditional land. So I know a lot of people are like, we want a farm, but we don't have land. So introducing buckets is just another concept of allowing people to farm. And then the other notion is that previously I was working with NPOs and we would always take food parcels to communities, but it was never enough because like, what do they eat when we are not there? So the sustainability question was always a factor. So introducing this idea or project was also about just giving people, restoring their dignity, that they can grow their own food. I think it's very important that people have the skills and knowledge to just do their own stuff and not just rely on food parcels the whole time. And yeah, the community received it very well. I chose 15 families and I've been also getting requests, people approaching me and wanting to be included. And yeah, but I think the main challenge is also the area that I'm in, our town has a water shortage from municipality side though. So the participants there are trucks that actually come in and bring water. So they had to just store extra water to actually just water the crops. But yeah, it was received very well. And yeah, the next stage is just harvest and showing them how to treat their soil, to actually replant and what they can do to harvest the seeds from the crops that they get. But yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Malibone. I would just like to read out a few comments that have come through from the chat. One from Stacey Lee that says, very exciting to see community projects being supported, and hopefully this will contribute towards a broader discussion about activating and supporting initiatives rather than top-down initiatives by government. I hope the findings and insights will be shared and engaged with relevant government departments so that the support extends beyond the time frame of this project. I think that's very important because these projects are very much interesting, and the work that the grant recipients are doing is very important. In some cases, it may feel like a small project, but like from what we are hearing from them, you see how it has a great impact, especially with Sanila's project, where you're hearing that parents are getting involved in these projects and you see the transfer of knowledge from just something that should have been of benefit to just the kids, and it benefits families as well. And I think that's the importance of having active citizens and active individuals within communities to empower each other in the spaces that they're in. We also then have another comment from Lone Paulson who says, these projects are very inspiring and show that we don't always need big projects to create change, but that any small projects can achieve a great deal. And that is very true. So I will now go to our next grant recipient, who is Tusi, just to check whether you are able to to hear us, because I know you are having some technical difficulties. But Tusi, I wanted to ask you about your project and when you got started with your project, as well as how you came to the point of deciding to create a Two Greenish movement and what that is about. Hello, Vukani, are you around? Maybe while we wait for Vukani to get reconnected.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I had to unmute myself. So basically, our project is the Two Greenish Movement project, which is helping all elderly people in my community to make work easy for them when they are doing their work in the gardens. So this idea started in January when I saw them working in the gardens, and then I approached them, and I tried to help them back then in January, but I couldn't because I had no one to help me. So when I got this IUDF project funding, and then I went back to them, and then I told them how it's gonna be, and they were happy about the project. So basically, what we're doing as Two Greenish Movement is making sure that each and every day when they go to the gardens, it's not hard labor. It's not hard labor for them, but it's something that is easy because I can see that they love what they're doing. So with the challenges that we've been having is the fact that when we started with the project, when I started at the beginning, when I approached them about the idea, we had different ideas. But as soon as we received the funds, we started to change. The conversation now started to change, and sort of like many things came up that we did not plan we were going to do. One of them is plumbing, which has taken long. And the people who are doing the plumbing, we made sure that it's people within the community and people who are also involved in the gardening. And the challenge again is most of the people who have appointed themselves to do the job, they are not really professional in what they're doing. So we need to be patient with them. They will make us buy certain things that are not needed, and then you have to work with that as well. So to me, this project has been amazing, and it has taught me a lot since I've been working with other projects, but I wasn't in charge of those projects. So I would see as if things are easy, like working with the community, it's easy, but it's really not easy because you have to get to know the people, you have to get to know not just by names, but you have to know exactly where they're coming from, and all those things. I don't know if I'm answering your question because as I'm speaking now, I'm worried about me disconnecting as I'm speaking. But I hope I'm answering your question. You can ask me as we go. Is
Yes,
that fine to read? Cool.
yes. I think one other thing I would have wanted to ask you is maybe to speak about what other projects you worked on and maybe how that led to you working on this project. I know you've touched on that a little bit, but maybe just a little bit more insight into that process.
Okay, I've worked with the art. I worked on the Art My Josie project. They were doing public art all around Johannesburg. We're working with different communities, helping artists and upcoming artists to voice up their voices within the community in a form of drawings, artwork, huge murals in their communities and stuff like that. And my role was I was a photographer, but also an observer of what is happening and going on around me. So I took the techniques and the skills that I learned from that project and put them in this project, and it has worked for me.
That is great. I think I would like to ask you just one more question, which is, if you could like go into that sort of relationship building between you and some of the community members who have chosen to get involved in your project. You have mentioned things such as people are willing to engage with the project, but their skills development is not at the level that would be sort of expected. So you do have to sort of manage that relationship and be patient with them in that process. But how did you go about getting people in your community involved?
Um, well, first of all, we had a workshop, and then in the workshop, we discussed about how we're going to go about the project, and then people raised their opinions, of course, and their ideas as to how the project should go and stuff like that. And then we'll take their ideas and put them within our projects, because one thing that we've realized is that this project is would have not been here without them. So each and everything we do, we make sure that we sit with them down, speak to them, and hear what they need for them to carry on doing the work. And then we'll take their ideas, come back and sit down and dissect them and go back to them, and then find a link between our idea as the helpers and them as beneficiaries, and then we'll work from there going forward. And in terms of them not having skills to do the job is something that I was expecting, because I mean, in my belief is that this project is not for us to do the work, but it's also for us impacting the community, making sure that as soon as the project is over and the project is done and over with, people are left with certain skills. Like the guy who was helping me with plumbing is now he now knows how to plumb, because we've been doing this thing consistently until now the end he's getting it, and everything now is sorted and it's done by him. And the funny thing is that at the beginning, he didn't know nothing about plumbing, but he appointed himself and the community appointed him that is going.
I think we've just lost Tusi, but what's important about what he's saying is very, very much resonates with the comments that were coming through the chat, which was the importance of engaging with people within the community and how that leads to greater change. People are always willing to engage and be involved in different ways, and it's about pulling people in and having them share what it is they would like to engage in, and seeing how you manage that relationship to improve your communities. You see in this case that people are very much involved in the work that is taking place around them. So with that, I would just like to go back to the comments and pull out one of the comments by Lungedo, who was responding to the comment from Lone that was mentioned earlier. And he's saying, watching these projects showcased here that seem to have more equitable and benefit cost ratio. I would now like to move on to our next two grant recipients, who are Nomngebo and Kululeko. And for you guys, the question I have is that both of you engage with government in your projects. And so I would just like to maybe find out about your experience in that regard, and maybe you could speak to how that relationship can be improved on in the future and what the benefits of that have been. Yes, we can.
Can I go first?
Yes.
Nomcebo. Okay, so in my experience with working with government, I found that different government departments have different levels of receptiveness. I find that when I'm calling DWS or engaging with them via email, they're very responsive and they give me the information I need at like a reasonable turnaround time. Other departments, I ended up having to adjust my project strategy because a certain department wasn't giving me the information I needed. So I find that in order for government programs to actually be effective, they need to have a team in place, because the one problem I had was one lady was running an entire department, and that lady is now on maternity leave, and the department's left hanging. So yeah, I think there needs to be some sort of change with them and their responsiveness and receptiveness to actually make their structures and programs successful. Yeah, I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Yes, you did. And I think we can then go into inputs from Gululeko.
Good morning, folks. So I think what we did was essentially took a sort of landmark and a hallmark project, and we identified the sort of critical asset that is very distinct to a city like Durban, and that is the port of Durban. And what we then did was to say this is the hallmark, and this is sort of a tool that we can use to lend itself to the dialogue of around competitive cities. And we sort of started the conversation with the Economic Development Unit to essentially say, look, you're developing inner city strategies, speaking around sustainability and trying to build economic strategies for the resilience of the city of eThekwini. It would be amiss not to really start interrogating one, the critical asset being the port, but two, the mission statement of a city like eThekwini, which is to be the cleanest, greenest, and most livable city on the continent. And if I'm not mistaken, the one I think it was UNESCO as well has really identified Durban to be one of the greenest cities on the continent. So from that perspective, I think it's underlying the priority on people's minds, but also our competitiveness around the three cities or three major metropolitan cities in SA. And then I think it's just like Namtebo said, I think it's just the idea that the project is different, means different things to different people. So on the one side, it's communicating different value propositions for a particular department. So for example, we'd go to transport and planning and speak about circularity in the way that it affects mobility. We would speak to DSW, so for example, our waste collection services, to speak about how they, the value proposition around how we can communicate our project to informal waste pickers in the city. And then speak at a higher level to the senior leadership. So this would be your city mayors and such around how the economics of circularity and how that might be and really fleshing out the value proposition there, but also looking at the social aspects. And what we've learned over the project is understanding that the environmental departments are very geared towards the projects and sort of the operations that they go through. And so speaking directly to their needs has really helped sort of dual charge our project going forward. And more importantly, I think it's that advocacy tool. Jogudu, I think we've spoken many times about this as what is the one product that one could make out of waste, recycled plastic, that could really be an advocacy tool. And we sort of brought it down to literacy in the city, right? To then say South Africa has a literacy rate of 87%, the balance being a very strong illiterate citizenry, if I may say so. And if what we did is look at the root cause there and understand that the real challenge is actually eyesight. So it's not that most folks don't comprehend or don't understand or things like that. It's just the physical ability to really read the content that is pushed out and how cities can communicate with its citizens. And so the project will involve recycled plastic and eyesight. Just to give you a hint there. But yeah, that's how we've been able to sort of speak differently to different departments and also offer them different value propositions. And also just play the different departments against each other, right? To then say, hey, I spoke to this department and they're really excited about the project, and really cross-pollinate and include people in the conversations and hold them accountable to each other. So that's how we've been able to navigate local government.
No, that's very interesting. And it's also interesting to see how the experiences have been different, but in some ways similar between both projects. So I think what's coming through there is just the importance of partnering and engaging and being very much ready to take on a project and the different challenges that do come about, and how you can use knowledge and navigating around circumstances in order to build relationships that get sustained, and seeing how best you leverage those relationships in order to push a project forward. I would just like to read a comment that's come through from Geshi, or rather a question, which is saying, having gone through executing these projects, I am curious what these young people feel IUDF should do in order to encourage other young activists and practitioners to engage with improving their towns and cities. I'm hoping this is something that the panelists can just give a moment to think about while we go into insights from Siska and Lee. And for you too, I think my main question for you, given the types of projects you've been running, is what has been most fulfilling about your projects? And maybe what has inspired your projects, and how do you plan on pushing them forward?
Who wants to
Hello,
go first? Okay.
It's Rashik. I'm just joining Siska as a surprise guest.
Welcome.
I think most inspiring has been, I think that other people are realizing that small changes are possible, and that if they just, initially when we conceptualized the project, it was all about a placemaking toolkit, and we would sort of give people a practical guide about how to upgrade spaces in their neighborhood, figure out the zoning, contact your ward councillor, who you probably haven't seen in the last 4 years, contact brick company for bricks, contact this person for this. So, and I think what we found more surprising was that people were now taking more ownership of other spaces and thinking of ways to bring these simple interventions to their areas and not being as passive. As Siska mentioned, we also included, allocated our budgets for people to help us on the day. So we paid people, but other people also joined who really wanted to just be part of it. And some kids joined as well. And so I think it was, it's always just, I think the amazing part of the grant is just a small focused, projects that involve people have such a massive impact. And I think it's our big challenge with government is we're so focused on massive hard infrastructure that the grant has been long overdue, in that, you should definitely continue this going forward, to show that a lot of small actions, as cheesy as it sounds, generate so much more community and societal value than just putting down BRT routes, which are sterile, or just putting down, just doing the big spend, which is essential. But I think it shows that people are equipped already to build their own seating and to build their own spaces. And they don't need millions of rands. They just need somebody who cares and somebody who's present. And also just networks. It's easy for us to email and call and ask the waterfront for support, because I know somebody there to help us with ideas and bricks and overseeing the building of the project. But not everyone has that. So I think there's so much more which comes from it by just sharing networks with people as well. And I think that's just, I don't know if you find anything that's been inspiring for you.
I think incredible was on the day when we started the building, there were about 8 people, and they were all paid to be there. And the more community members who came unpaid, they just wanted to volunteer, the more they gave their opinion on it as well, and they kind of were able to take ownership. So working with a community is beautiful in the sense that people feel comfortable giving their opinions, and the more their thoughts are included in the project, the more ownership is taken of the project. So that was quite a valuable experience. And even just a tree makes such a big difference. So I agree with Rashik in the sense that your intervention doesn't need to be massive. You don't need to spend so much money on trying to make this big thing. You can plant a tree, and then the community takes ownership of the tree, and that's theirs. And that, I think, is what's really beautiful about it.
Over to me.
I think what's been most fulfilling about our distance project, maybe let me start with what inspired the project. As I mentioned in the video, we're a group of Jewish artists, and some of the research that we do generally is about activating unused, contested, or neglected spaces in the areas in which we live. And this park was highlighted as all three of those. It's kind of unused, it's contested, it sits on the border of two suburbs that are very, very different. I think the other thing that we're doing as Jewish artists is that we're looking at the myths and narratives that surround us and surround South African society in general. And as makers of narratives, we're looking at rewriting or retelling the narratives or questioning the old myths and narratives that exist. So this project created performance artworks in this contested and neglected park between people of real difference. And I think what was so fulfilling and inspiring is that and even sort of during discussions with Getchi and Jakodu, we had this uncomfortable moment where we're talking about difference. It's very uncomfortable, particularly for South Africans in a post-apartheid context, to talk about the differences between race, or to say we're Jewish, so that means that the people that we're working with are going to be non-Jewish. There's this unease and discomfort talking about difference. And the artists themselves had to have those uncomfortable conversations between each other, but the conversations then, that challenge of working through distance, when it was overcome, the connection between the people was really real and amazing. As one artist said, he said, this is his new family. So we worked through the challenge to create these artworks in the park. And I think just everyone's talking about what their projects have sort of led to something new. You know, we've become very close with the security company in the park, and we've seen that there are really real problems in the area. Kids using drugs, that the park's actually not even safe. When we started talking to city parks and to the councillor, and this is something that we want to investigate and to work on and to bring to light as artists. We can put these kind of secret narratives out into the open. And we're doing that. The next part of our project from the seed funding is we've documented the day, and we're making it into film, a 25-minute film. And we hope that you are all going to watch it and see exactly what happened and what the kind of blueprint that I talked about, what does real inclusivity actually mean? That blueprint will be divulged in the film. And we're hoping to release it towards the end of the year or early January 2021.
Thank you, Lee. I think these are definitely really exciting, and from all the projects, it's going to be interesting seeing how they sort of develop and move towards concluding their projects. So I'd like to pull in a comment from Stacey Lee, which basically is praising our grant funding recipients, and she says, well done to those, well done also to the grantees for seeing opportunities in their communities. Also great to hear their own learning and growth in implementing their project. These are all great for empowering the civic. I would like to also then go into a couple of questions that are coming in. One from Stephanie Chetty, who asks, at the panelists having received the seed funding as the first recipients, do you consider this to be a continued initiative to help build and empower our communities further? I think I'll leave this one to anyone in the panel to comment and say and respond to the question.
Absolutely. I think we saw this in Durban in some of our work in the CBD as well. How do I put this? The government view is that it's only big factories, big new buildings, big greenfield developments that create change. So when we're studying spaces at Durban Station or in parts of CBD, it's these pockets of change which collectively change people's attitudes, that somebody cares. We can still do the big things like improving the quality of public transport and the interchanges, but I think you could imagine, like, it's called a seed grant, but you actually imagine all these seeds flying across the country into different areas that also those cities and municipalities which get forgotten about, you know. So I'd like to see 7 public space grants land in Bloemfontein or like smaller towns. I'd like to see, you know, we have a colleague in Polokwane. He's got brilliant ideas. You should look at his Civic tour on our Instagram page. He did a tour of some of the spaces. So, and he's probably got, you know, great ideas around, especially in a pandemic, to remind people that that space matters. So I think, yeah, it's if you multiply it by 100, 200 projects every 6 months, you're going to have this like culture building of people doing things. And sometimes, you know, I would like us to give the next grant directly to the community so that they're set up, they're organized, they've got their SnapScan, they've got whatever they need. They can use the same contacts for funding. So yeah, I see it as these like hundreds of dots landing across the country. And ideally it's going to be led by, you know, the under 35s, the group of people that can implement change. And sometimes there might be mistakes, sometimes there might be projects which don't succeed, but I think if South Africa can build an active society through projects that in various neighborhoods, then, you know, we could become globally known just for being you know, for actually doing what the IEDF says, which is all of society acting. And so we're giving real meaning to the sort of the rhetoric around bringing different groups and people together to create resilient, inclusive cities. Let's just actually do it. And the grant has been, I think, it's been one of the best things to quickly, I mean, it's been 2 months and we've seen from some of the projects today that, you know, so much more has come from it. And Stephanie and COGTA and SSEN, you have our full support to roll this out across the country rapidly.
Thank you, Rashik and Siska. Is anyone also willing to respond to the question and give us some of their inputs?
Yeah, if I might just lean in on the conversation here. So I think I'm having built this sort of tool, so I've just added the link there. It is a work in progress. I think all the content is sitting in the rear end, and we're just waiting for an opportune time just to do a bulk upload. So, I mean, what we did in terms of the approach was to make everything open, and this is why it's called Open Ocean, right? Because the success of the project is built on like what 3.6 million Durbanites knowing about this project, and even in the approach, I think if you scroll down there, it's just literally a call to action to say, hey, if we've got enthusiasts who have any drone footage or whatever the case is, then they can lend it to this project. And I think just making a very sort of citizen science and a citizen facing or focused project, and also just making it open so you get the contribution and the diversity of opinions, I think is really important. I think a thing for us that was really compelling was around actually having chats with the waste pickers and understanding the movements as just these agents of the city, and understanding the city better than most citizens would be. It was really compelling. I mean, some of the interviews that we went out and really found that these were people who in homesteads came looking for opportunities in the urban districts, and looking at how they're now just making a sort of income from that stage, and also trying to build value onto that. I think just keeping the openness of a project and letting people be stewards of it, I think was really a strong lesson that we got.
Thank you, Nkululeko. I think I would like to definitely use this last question that was posed as sort of like a way to bring in comments from everyone else, because we are reaching the end of this session, and just hear what everyone might have to say. I think this question also pulls us into thinking, into hearing what is coming next for your projects. So I don't know if maybe Sanele, you'd be willing to give us some insight into what's happening next for your project?
Sure. I also want to actually contribute to the last question. about, is this something that could be a continued initiative, especially since we were the first recipients of this kind of funding? And absolutely think that it's something that could be a continued initiative. Just with our initiative alone, I've realized, and I had this conversation, I think a little bit with you, Jakudi, that with our supply chain and the whole COVID that was going on, and having to get all the materials that we thought we were going to get from certain places, and then prices inflating and all of that, it forced us to think a little bit out of the box. And we found ourselves thinking, well, how can we do this in a better way? And we ended up using community members to build some of the cages that we were going to use and all of that kind of stuff to bring people in. And when that happened, I realized that so many people actually want to make a change in their communities. They just don't know how, and they don't have the access. And they don't know of things like IUDF. So it's actually important that that with these initiatives that we're doing as the first responders, so to speak, it's sort of the flagship to show people that, hey, this is possible, and hey, we can do something about this. And on the IUDF part, maybe I'm digressing a little bit here, but on the IUDF part, I would really, really love in the future to see something that's more community-based, to show people that this funding exists and that these platforms for this. It could be really simple. It could be just workshops. Young people love it. Well, at least in the Ink area, which is Inand and Dozuma Wamashu. I know young people love attending workshops and finding out about things like this. There's even people who've asked me to create a workshop on, if you have an NPO, how do you help in the community? How do you do it with 0 Rand? How do you, people are interested and they want to make the change. They just don't know how. And so I think that IUDF can really bridge that gap, and they can really go further, deeper into into our communities for people to have access to that knowledge. I had access to the idea of IUDF because I have a smartphone, but not everyone has a smartphone and can go and Google. So we need to find other ways for our communities to be involved in this kind of thing. But moving forward, to continue our project. So the first half of the project has been, like I said, the farming. We got chickens at a point of lay, which means they're already at the level at which they just take out eggs every day. We haven't gotten the small chicks yet, and that's the second part of it, where we want to teach people how to incubate chickens so they can know that from the beginning to the end, what do you do? It's easier to manage them now at the point of lay stage because they don't need to be vaccinated. They don't need as much attention as smaller chicks. And I think that it's important moving forward in this project for the children to know this and for the parents to know this, especially since so many are starting to try and venture into getting into this kind of business. I've documented a few, and I'll send it through in the coming week. But I've documented a few parents who've actually started a business, a small scale egg production business because of our project. So this goes to show that there is something valuable to be had here. And if there was a little bit more time to do it, 3 months is a short time frame, I think. Maybe if it was a year or 2 years and even 3 years long project, you start to see more and more stronger changes. For us, just in the past 2 months, the school has been able to make 1,200 Rand from the eggs that we've sold. And with that money, they've been able to fix 2 classroom doors and a burglar guard. And that may seem small to us, but it's really big for the school, right? So can you imagine if we were in there, or if this project was to run in all schools and primary schools in the eThekwini district? Imagine how much that would take off from the government's, first of all, burdens, and from the parents and from the kids and from everyone really, through something that's sustainable and just keeps itself alive, sort of an ecosystem that can keep the school alive. So I think what IDF has done for us and is doing for everyone else is really incredible, and I'd really encourage it to keep on going and to try and see if we can do these projects in a longer term basis so we can see true changes within the school system and within the other systems that everyone is working in. For me, it's education, but to really see true changes in education through IUDF. Thanks.
Thank you for that input. I think what's coming out is also definitely that it's important to record a lot of these findings that are coming through from the projects. Lone Paulson did put in the comments that it would be a great pity if this initiative was not recorded and available for others to be inspired and take up their own initiatives. Even with what Sanele has put into the conversation, it shows that there are a lot of insights that can be pulled on and a lot of lessons about how these projects can be transferred from what they're starting off as into what they could potentially develop into. So definitely a month, 2 months is not enough to see how far these projects can go. But what is important is that these projects have been initiated. We are running out of time, so I hope everyone doesn't mind if I could maybe just take 5 minutes just to see if one more of the grant funding recipients would like to give in some of their input with regards to their project while I just look through the final comments that are coming through and give those back before we close out.
Well, I'll go. Besides for the film that we use the seed funding, a lot of it to document this and to go towards editing a film.
Okay.
But I think what everybody at the end of the day of Heritage Day, which was very significant when we had this activation of the park, everybody said, we've now formed this company of artists who are, multidisciplinary musicians and dancers and actors. And everybody said we will have to do this again. We have to do something bigger. We have to do something longer. People really wanted to work together again. So from my side, absolutely, this has been a seed initiative, and I'm going to try and get more funding, and I'm going to try and get everybody together again to work on something bigger. And hopefully we can invite you all to come to the park for a massive festival of arts and culture one day.
I would definitely love to attend one of the festivals. It was unfortunate that I wasn't able to attend the one that you did host, but we're definitely looking forward to seeing the video once it is produced. I think I'd just like to read 1 or 2 more comments. One from Geshi that says that it's so interesting and important to hear Sanele saying that young people want to be engaged, because the narrative in several parts of government is that young people, especially urban ones, are disengaged and apathetic. What a wonderful counter to that. We have to engage people in things and ways that interest them. There is one more question here, which is there some funding available for all the projects to make a short film for their projects? I think this is definitely something to put on as a way forward with the projects once each of them is reaching their sort of conclusion with regards to the first phase, which would have been around this time of the month. Yes, Geshi did respond to that, saying that there is funding for a recording overall. There's a lot of praise coming in from everyone, basically saying well done to the projects and just seeing how far they've come. So if there are no more comments coming through or inputs from the panelists, I think we have run over time by almost 10 minutes. So I just wanted to take this time to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. And thank you for all the comments and the questions and the discussion. I hope everyone is able to follow or take, if you would like to maybe put in the comments quickly, just a question about someone you'd like to get in touch with regards to their project. And let's keep following these projects and seeing how they progress and engaging with them. One last comment I'd really like to read has just come in from Geshi, which says, congrats grantees, please be in the closing ceremony tomorrow so that the minister can see you. Yes, thank you everyone, and have a great Friday.
Thank you. Bye.